Hi, this is Michael Waits recording live from Money 2020 Asia 2025 in Bangkok. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Insurance for the New Possible, where we discuss the future of finance, technology, and insurance. We are joined today by Costa Savva, the founder of Lazudi. I love the name. Thank you so much for coming to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me on. I'm doing very well.
Cannot wait. By the way, you are our last recording at this event, and it'll just be great, I think. Super great. So what are some of the PropTech models or approaches that you have seen tried that simply have not worked?
I think this is a pretty broad question.
Purposefully.
And it's an interesting industry to try to disrupt.
Yeah.
There's a lot in the commission pool. There's a lot of marketing services that go around it. Very fragmented.
Yeah.
Relating to the topic, why we discussed it prior to today was when people try to take the human interaction out of it.
Right.
No matter how many times people think it's not an emotional decision, majority of the time it is. Emotions come into it. It's a big financial decision for individuals, and having that human connection goes a long way for that final mile. So some of the models that we've seen over the years where they've tried to limit or remove the agent from the transaction process has not always worked. Other models may be fractional ownership. I've never seen anyone really scale sort of the fractional side. It's very difficult to exit. You don't have that liquidity.
So tell me, I want to talk about this a little bit. Why do you think the fractional side hasn't worked that much? And actually, before that, why was there so much hype around it to begin with?
I think it was a low ticket and an easy barrier to commoditize real estate for more of a mass market.
Right.
So you as an end investor, you could spend $500 and buy a fractional piece of a property. The trouble is these are very small, closed marketplaces. So how do you exit? How do you...
Yeah, to whom do I sell? Like, if I need that money, what do I do?
You're only going to sell it to someone else that owns a bit of that property, and they might lowball you, and they'll only buy it if it's at a fantastic price.
Yeah, look, I can give you a perfect example of this because I built a house in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's just say it costs, I don't know, 200 somethings. Okay. It doesn't really matter. When I went to sell it, somebody offered me 60 somethings for it. And I was like, you must be kidding me. Because real estate is
a very strange market.
Yeah, because real estate itself is actually very liquid.
Yes.
Right? Because you can't short it. Right. Most people can't pay cash for it.
Yeah.
So all these things make it that way. But I don't think fractionalization was ever going to work.
It's very difficult. And if you break it down, if you're looking at 6 to 10% returns when you're a pure investor, what difference does that make then investing in a REIT or into the stock markets where you have the liquidity of exiting your stocks if it's real estate backed?
Exactly. Like I hadn't said this out loud before, but why not just invest in a real estate investment trust?
Trust, yes.
Right. Because you can pay whatever you can invest as much or as little as you want into it for the most part, right?
Yeah.
So what's the difference between investing in a REIT or doing fractional ownership of like the Hilton Hotel or some such thing, right?
And it's kind of a way developers have tried to do that, to repackage maybe timeshare or other things and kind of putting a new wrapper on something. And
that wasn't good to begin with. Right.
And I think that's where most of these disruptive models have failed to beat the incumbents in terms of the traditional way. Real estate fund or a REIT or something tends to always outperform them in the long run.
So one of the things that I talk about with my own business partners a lot is why do people expect to be able to pay less for something and still get better quality for it, right? So this gets back to why do you want a completely digital experience, not even a hybrid experience in the real estate market, and expect to get better service?
And I think this is where a lot of models never survive long term. From a transaction perspective, you have models who are trying to drive down the commissions in the market. But if you're in that race to the bottom, the service is going to fail at some point. And that's not specific just to real estate. If you're any service industry, whether you're a marketing agency or a legal advisor, if you're just purely basing it and you're driving costs down, the service is going to suffer and these companies go out of business.
Yeah. But why do you think people keep trying to do this? Why do you think, like, what is this common misperception in these digital experiences where people think, I'll just do it again and this time it's going to work?
When capital was cheaper in terms of raising money and going for market share and people trying to disrupt at scale.
When it was just easy to raise money,
So people were just pushing the boundaries, going for market share, but there was less of a focus on sustainable profitability. And obviously that's a big change in the last couple of years. But the idea was the race to bring the cost down, bring the customer acquisition in, own the marketplace, and then remonetize in different ways and going up. And that's where mortgage products, maybe insurance products come in, but no one's ever executed it properly.
No, that's never worked. I was going to say, like WeWork was the perfect example of this.
Yes.
We'll just spend a ton of money, and then when everybody's here, then we'll sell them other things.
And then we had Purple Bricks in the UK, and who tried to go into Australia.
Doing the same thing.
We've just recently heard about Food Panda in Thailand, which was big news. So it's a difficult, when you're working on small margins, it's difficult to make a business sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, I like the WeWork example because at the end of the day, if you paid any attention to the real estate market, all it actually ended up being at the end was like a leveraged real estate investment business. Completely. Yeah. So in your mind, if there has to be a human element, what is an ideal hybrid? Because you're always going to use digitalization, yeah?
Exactly.
Always, because that gives you the ability to scale in places where even if there is a human involved, you can do it. What does an ideal hybrid experience look like to you in the real estate market?
For me, and it's sort of diving into AI, because
go for it. Yeah, dive.
Just
don't get hurt.
Most of the efficiencies, I think, is in the boring parts of the business, operations, streamlining things. Instead of spending a day doing research, you can do that within half an hour, clicking. The AI tools are really changing the way we operate, especially from a real estate.
Can you tell me how? Like, can you give me some examples of how? Because I think I know. But you do it every day. Tell me how.
Just even doing contracts, getting NDAs out, going through that, boring things operationally. So in my field, I work with a lot of real estate agents, and they hate admin. They're salespeople. They're sort of mini business owners in their own respects.
Yeah.
But they're better off in front of customers. But during a real estate transaction, there's a lot of back office operations that have to
legal stuff that have to get done. Payment stuff that has to get figured out, all this stuff, right? And it goes both ways because you have to do it with the owner.
Yes.
In this case, and either the buyer or the renter, yeah?
And it goes from everything from preparing a property to list for marketing perspective. If an owner sends you images and they're terrible, you might not have time to go back out and do new photography. There's tools out there that enhance them, upscale them, present them property better as it should do, down to even doing better property matching, creating property descriptions.
Right.
So even from content, from a marketing perspective and operation, it's an area that's saving us a lot of time.
Can you use artificial intelligence to show it a photograph or a series of photographs about the inside and even the outside of an apartment or a house and say, write me a product description of this?
Yes.
Okay, tell
me
how
that's
that
what
works.
we're using at the moment.
I didn't know that.
So prior to writing a description, it will crawl. One thing about AI is you've got to feed it with the data. If the data is not there, then you don't get the outcome. So going through the features and what someone has imported into the system, plus scanning the images and then putting an output. And then it's up to the human, and this is where the human comes in, because they like to hallucinate or misinterpret things. And this is where you clean it up. But instead of you spending half an hour, 40 minutes trying to write a beautiful description, that's a 5-minute editing job.
Right.
And that's just one element of the overall.
It's a beautiful use of this technology, right? Because even if you're not great at writing, most people are good at going, that's not what I wanted to say, when they have the full text, yeah? Can I ask you this? Are you involved in the transaction?
Yes.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay, and was that something you decided from the beginning? So you're not just a portal.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
So my background was portals prior to setting up Lazudi. So we'd worked in marketplaces for a few years. The founders of that business exited and sold that. And
fair enough.
I stayed on for a bit longer. But we sort of found that because these markets, specifically in Asia, are very fragmented, the customer journey is not optimal. Even from trying to look for a property, you'll find you contact 10 different agents. Half of them never respond to you, which is a bad experience.
It's weird, actually, to me,
And I don't think this is specific to Asia, because I hear the US is the same and other markets.
Yeah, it's weird. I always wonder, it's like, I always use a pizza shop as an example.
Yeah.
If I walk into the pizza shop, I'm there because I want a pizza. And if you don't serve me, if I have to get your attention, there's something wrong with your sales mechanisms. And it's the same thing in the real estate market, right? I'm there because I want something.
Yeah.
I'm not a tourist. I'm not a real estate tourist, right? Yeah, sorry.
But also the agents get scammed and there's spam and people. So there's ways of trying to improve it for the agents as well, which is sometimes why they don't always respond to everything. If they think it's a bit of a fake lead, then they ignore it. So it goes both sides. we also found a lot of properties on the market aren't on the market. So
Yeah.
agents advertising properties that sold 2 years ago
Yeah.
and using it as bait to recapture people.
So I moved a year and a bit ago.
Yeah.
And I had a specific place where I knew somebody that used to live there, and I went and looked on some of the portals, and a few rooms there were available.
Yeah.
And when I got to the agent, they were like, "Yeah, none of that's available."
So exactly, and
none of it.
Tell me a little bit more about your experience. So that's a prime problem that was one.
So it listed like 5 or 6 different apartments, and one of them was like in my price range, the right size, on the right floor, with the right view, and all this stuff. And I was like, and 2 of them were in like a good place.
Yeah.
And they listed 5. And when I got there, only 1 was available, and it wasn't the one that I wanted to see. And then there was a co-agent involved.
Yes.
And that was the guy who was actually running the thing, not the person who took me there.
Yeah.
And once there's a co-agent involved, I feel like this is never going to work.
Chinese whispers.
Yeah, because they're going back and forth with each other in a way that I don't understand, and I don't care.
Yeah.
Right? But is there a way to fix that?
Well, this is where we sort of wanted to bring in the best of both worlds. So we wanted to operate on the transaction side, bring on the agents, supply the training, provide them the tools that they can
Then
operate
would you
better.
co-agent as well? You wouldn't.
We do, but we're moving more in the other way around. So most of our focus has been trying to work directly with sellers and managing them as the buyer agent. But because we've created a platform and a portal, then the consumers are now coming to us. So we're managing it more end to end on most cases.
So do you have your own agents that work for you?
Yes.
And they just work for you.
They're exclusive to us.
So they're not their own micro entrepreneurs or mini entrepreneurs. They just work for you.
They still are, in a sense, in their heads. They still see themselves as that.
But I mean, they can't trade something off platform.
No, they have to. So,
that's what I mean.
And this is where the technology comes back in terms of measuring results, making sure that they are achieving specific KPIs. We provide them with the marketing support that they need. We invest in terms of providing them leads.
Yeah, and I guess there's a tipping point where you would know if they're doing something off platform, because like they're still doing stuff, they still have an income.
The numbers won't add up.
Yeah, the numbers won't add up. They'll be like, how could you can't live on what I paid you this month? Yeah. But somebody rented that apartment and I don't know who they are.
But that's why agents come to us, because they want to take away all the stress of the
admin stuff.
Of the admin, the marketing, finding inventory. So we supply that to the agents. So a lot of the agents that have come to us, even if they are, we're on a revenue share with them, they earn more in terms of their take home than if they were working by themselves, earning 100% of the commission.
So I don't like to put things in boxes, right? Yeah, it's way better for them.
Yeah.
For sure. Way better for them. I don't like to put businesses in boxes, right? But we talked about PropTech at the beginning.
Yeah.
But it always seems to me that businesses, at least today in this digital age, that are involved in the transaction, at some level are kind of a fintech.
In a way, and I think this is my interest of being at the conference today, is I think there's a lot of product that could go in terms of making the customer journey more seamless,
right?
And things that could layer in to have a better experience.
So the other thing that I see as well, when I talk about this a lot at fintech conferences, but also on my other podcasts, is there seems to be this merging between fintech and insurtech.
Yeah.
Like people aren't talking about them separately. They're just like, they're doing similar things in the same place. And if there is a fintech platform or a fintech opportunity, by definition, there's an insurance opportunity as well. What do you think about that?
I mean, I'd use the analogy like buying a car. The majority of people are doing a lease hire, and your expectation, if you buy a high value asset, you need to insure it.
For sure.
So, and the same principles need to happen with home ownership. So we deal with cash buyers; they do exist. However, the majority of the market is, people want to finance. They want to create more liquidity instead of putting all their cash into one.
It's just more efficient monetarily, financially.
And as we've seen, the Asian markets, prices of property move to more developed market prices.
Yep.
These assets aren't $100,000 anymore.
No.
We're talking about $500,000, $1 million,
$1 million, $2 million,
and these are substantial investments.
You had about 90 million bought for an apartment.
Exactly,
it's real money.
And then we've seen with the recent earthquakes. And
so I was going to bring this up actually. I was in Singapore when the earthquake happened.
Yeah.
But when I came back, I was like, my place didn't take that much damage, but more than I want to see permanently.
Yeah.
And it wasn't clear to me, like I don't have any insurance, right? But it wasn't clear to me who did.
Yeah.
But somebody did. The building did, and the owner did. Right. And I'm just curious, like, how they obtained it. What's going to make it easier on a platform like Lazudi? How do you integrate that in?
I think that needs to be multi-layered. I don't think there's one approach. From the human perspective, when you are working with someone during their journey to find a property, it's an experience. If you're relocating here, retiring here, you've got $500,000, you want to find that home for life.
Yeah.
you want to go see the market. You want to go out. You basically become someone's friend during that journey. You're their confidant.
Yeah, trying.
And then they ask you other questions. How do you do your visa, insurance, health insurance? And obviously, when you're based here or someone's relocating to another city, then you will feed them information and support them with what they might need. I've got a connection for health insurance. I've got someone for home insurance. So there's the offline element that comes in when you're. There's also the online customer journey. So when you're applying for a mortgage or you found the property, and then during that transaction process, obviously you're in our database. As you're checking out, you get introduced to insurance, and then that's more of a self-service thing and passed on to a partner like Chubb, who's a specialist and has a brand and people aware of.
Trust,
Then that becomes a more seamless experience. They don't have to go to another platform, compare 10 different providers. It's one inquiry. They've gone from finding the property that they're interested in, booking an appointment with the insurance company and maybe the mortgage company at the end.
Do you still see places where there are friction in this customer journey that you were just talking about, particularly when it comes to embedding financial products into it?
I definitely think in Asia.
You definitely think so in Asia? But like, where are they? And here's what I mean. Like, I have to put down a deposit, but do I really want to commit 2 months?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, but you could embed a financial product there that says, I pay somebody else to do that for me, a percentage of what that is, in a way like an insurance product to do that. How do you see that stuff progressing as well?
Specifically with Thailand, it's an interesting market because we don't really have a large mortgage advisor brokerages here that we do in the UK and the US. You're dealing directly with the banks. So even that is a process where you can't go somewhere and really survey and for someone to come back to you. I think the pre-approval process can be improved here because people are finding the asset first, then going to the banks. And then if they fail, then the whole transaction's broken. So then you can't do the insurance.
So nobody's happy,
No one's happy. So in other markets that I've operated in, you can get pre-qualified, so you know exactly what you're able to spend. Then you find your property. However, here is in a lot of cases, it happens the other way. And then the insurance is the last, once they've tidied everything up, let's talk about insurance.
So you talked before about sometimes the agents don't answer questions or don't even respond to leads because they feel like they may be getting scammed.
Yes.
So there's like this mismatch of trust kind of going both ways.
Both ways, yeah.
And I'll tell you, in my own experience, I was trying to negotiate my rent, but since I'm not talking to the owner, I don't think my real estate agent ever told my owner.
Yeah, you don't know what information's making it through.
I'm 100% sure because I would have signed a much longer lease at a slightly lower rate to give us both visibility, right? So I know, how much is going to cost over the next 3 years or 4 years, and they could say like, I don't even have to think about this for the next 4 years, but the agent is optimizing for short-term
gains.
Yeah. They were like, nope, I want this thing. I want it now. And I want it to be at this price.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you fix that trust gap?
I think that goes both ways. So that's building a better relationship with the landlords. Because ultimately, if you're doing a longer term contract, it financially benefits the agent. They should be trusted. But some people feel like it's too much of a question. You might back out. They just want the quick win, and they don't do that whole sort of.
Right, but how do you make that easier, right? Because I was 100% going to move into my place. I did move into my place. I still live in that place.
And you might buy it one day if you like it so much.
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. And this is where the fintech solutions come in, like reverse using your rent to then acquire the property.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where a lot of products could come into the market over the next few years. And those are the areas that I'm interested in because we get asked from tenants about, can I buy this property? Can we put these rent into, I'll give you 10% and then the rent goes to what you would call a mortgage.
Right. But you're getting financed by the owner.
By the owner, yeah.
Yeah. But essentially all you're doing at some level is paying the owner's mortgage off.
Yes.
Right, depending on what the price is you've negotiated with them to buy the property.
But the security is a bit relaxed on it. You're not 100% safe because it's not in a.
I understand.
In a financial vehicle like a mortgage.
You never have to deal with a bank.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But can you build that kind of stuff into your platform?
There's definitely solutions I've seen in different markets who are considering this. So solutions like when they're using rental payments to build up a credit score. And I think this all goes together. In terms of moving the industry forward, I think all these solutions should come together, and it's about whether that will come from a financial institution or that would be the real estate companies. That's still to be seen.
But I also want to have a closer relationship with my owner.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes the agents get in the way because they don't want to lose control. Anyway, Last thing, you said to me on the prep call, the final mile is always human. And you were very confident about this. What does this mean for Lazudi and for your service design?
This goes to one of my earlier points. I think the human interaction when you're buying one of the most expensive assets in your life sometimes won't just order it online like you might do a new pair of shoes.
Yeah, even that I wouldn't do, but I understand.
But the beginning part is online. It's very digital.
Right.
You're surveying the market. You're building your own understanding, and you don't want to talk to anyone yet. So in terms of the funnel effect, your process is very digital until you're ready to go see something. And even that point, we can supply 360 virtual tours, videos, so you can get a very good idea of the type of property and the condition that you're in. So maybe compared to 10 years ago, you might need to survey 20 properties. Now you might only need to see 5 because you're better informed.
Yeah, because you have more information.
And information is king. So then you're spending less time with lots of different agents. So the time that you're spending with someone is better value. But ultimately, that final inspections, you need to, if you're spending $1 million, you want to touch and see it in 90% cases. Unless you're an investor and you're buying something at 30% discount and you just know your market values and it's, that's purely an investment, it's different. But if we're talking about somewhere that you might stay or use for a retirement later on, or, it might be a holiday home for you, then that's where it's a lifestyle, emotional decision.
I got it. Costa Savva, the founder of Lazudi. That was the fastest 25 minutes of my life.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.